Okay, it is now 7 o'clock, so we will go ahead and get started. Hi everyone, welcome to tonight's virtual writers workshop. My name is Salim. I will be serving as your host tonight and will help navigate questions. Our topic tonight is Biblio Breakdown, how to surprise your readers with local author and editor Ekta Garg. Before I introduce Ekta, I do want to give a few updates about the library. We are open to the public at this time and offering a grab and go model. This is where you can come in, browse the shelves, grab your hold items, and even use your computer for 1 hour every day. If you don't feel comfortable coming into the library just yet, that's okay. We are continuing our curbside delivery service. This is where you can request items at home and pick them up in front of the library. For more information on that, you can visit champaign.org/curbside. If you need help, there are a few ways you can connect with staff. You can schedule a consultation at champaign.org/book-a-librarian. You can chat with us anytime the library is open, and you can email us at librarian@champaign.org. I also want to share some information about a new campus and community-focused collaboration. It's titled Pandemics as a Portal to Change, presented by Cranard Art Museum. It is a public call for creativity, including writing, visual arts, original music, and video, that asks the community and students to take any one of our current struggles and imagine how we might make a change and reimagine our world. I'm sharing this here since writing is one of the areas of creative work they are seeking. I'm going to include a link in the chat in a moment where you can find more details about the submission requirements, and the deadline, which is April 19th. I'd also like to share a few instructions for Zoom before we start. So depending on your device, at the bottom of the screen towards the center, you'll see the option to chat, which will allow you to type your question in. Next to that is the option to raise your hand if you'd prefer to use your microphone, and I can unmute you. We appreciate if you could hold all your questions for Ekta until the end of her presentation, and she will address them then. With that said, I'd like to now introduce our presenter. Following the completion of her Master of Science in Journalism in Magazine Publishing from Northwestern University, Ekta's career in publishing started in 2005 when she became the editor for all special projects out of community newspapers, which is now Pamplin Media Group in Portland, Oregon. Since then, her career has led her to writing and editing just about everything from healthcare to home improvement to Hindi films. In 2010, Ekta added blogging to her resume by starting The Right Edge. The Right Edge and its 3 extension blogs gives her a place to share her short fiction, book reviews, and parenting adventures. The Right Edge also serves as a communication tool for those interested in hiring her as an editor for their writing projects. She's here tonight to share her expertise with all of us. Ekta, thank you for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much, Salim. I am going to share my screen so you can see the slides, and then see that, Salim?
Yes.
Right, wonderful. Good evening, everyone. As Salim said, my name is Ekta Garg, and I'm so glad you can join us online tonight for our writing workshop. The basis for tonight's presentation is my podcast called Biblio Breakdown, which was an original podcast on the Writescast Network created by author Ryan R. Campbell. In a Biblio Breakdown, I analyze a novel based on a theme. After sharing what the novel has done well, I offer exercises related to that theme so that writers can accomplish the same thing in their own stories. You get a chance to reflect on the book and then act on what you've learned in your work. Let's get started. Do you like surprises? When it comes to good writing, I love them. After editing and reviewing books for more than a decade, I find that when I start reading something new, my brain is already clicking away with predictions from the first chapter, who the killer will be, or how the couple will finally get together. Having the skills to make educated guesses on questions like these makes me a better editor and reviewer because it allows me to focus on details in the craft. Of course, it also takes away some of the pleasure of reading. That's why I'm always delighted when an author can do something unexpected and surprise me. If the author can make me sit up straight in my chair and laugh out loud, so much the better. Tonight, in our Biblio Breakdown, we're going to talk about surprising your readers within the context of Logging Off by Nick Spalding. When I read the blurb for Logging Off, I found out it was about a British man named Andy Bellows, who is a freelance graphic designer with a big problem. Andy is addicted to technology and, more specifically, social media. The blurb told me that Andy would spend the duration of the book trying to fight his addiction by quitting it cold turkey. But nothing could prepare me for the opening lines of the book, which made me blink twice and then giggle. Chapter 1, in Andy's own voice, starts like this. Oh my God, this is amazing. Why haven't I seen this before? It's an app that records your bowel movements. Its name, How You Pooing. Yes, that's right. It's called How You Pooing. Genius. I'll admit, when I read the book the first time, I didn't know quite what to make of this. But within a paragraph or two, Andy makes it clear why an app like this would be important to him. He suffers from irritable bowel syndrome, and even though his discovery of the app is funny, the condition itself is not. Yet Andy manages to convey the seriousness of his illness in a way that will make you laugh time and again throughout the entire story. His self-deprecation, solidly British in every way, only makes it funnier. After all, if you're dealing with a serious condition that affects your life every single day, at some point, using laughter as medicine will definitely help you feel better. As a character, not only does Andy make us laugh, but he has the uncanny ability to home in on universal truths. On the morning that the book starts, Andy is preparing to do a presentation at Fluidity, an up-and-coming London fashion house that he can't relate to on a personal level. Andy doesn't mind so much, though, because he's a freelancer and a grown-up. He knows that as long as you do a job well, you don't have to be in love with it every single minute of every single day. Paying your bills is important too. He says, Fluidity designs the kind of clothes I wouldn't be seen dead in, as I am not 21 and barely in control of my own faculties, but they do seem to have a lot of money to throw around. I intend to be the graphic designer they throw some of that money at when I wow them with my skills. It's almost a given then that Andy's problems with social media implode during his presentation, because all morning he's ignored a severe pain in his neck and warning signs from his intestine that he might need to visit the facility soon. He was so busy beating level 3000 on Candy Crush and arguing with a man on Facebook about whether the city's plan to build houses on an old unused dairy farm is a good idea that he hasn't left time for anything other than pulling his presentation materials together while he waits for his Uber. Right in the middle of his presentation, Andy's jaw locks up. He can't speak, and then he feels a familiar churning in his gut. After an embarrassing run to the bathroom, Andy manages to make it home, secure in the knowledge that his chance with Fluidity is gone. Which might be for the best, actually, because one of the company heads was wearing a see-through shower curtain as her outfit. After Andy spends hours on Google diagnosing himself with anywhere from 7 to hundreds of different cancers, or possibly a cerebrodendroglioma, he goes to the doctor where he gets the worst diagnosis of all. All of his time with his technology is affecting him both physically and mentally. Spending hours in one position with his mobile devices is causing the locked jaw. The combative nature of social media platforms adds low-lying stress to his day that affects his irritable bowel syndrome. When something like a jaw presentation comes up, that just makes the stress and his condition flare up. His doctor recommends a digital detox for 2 months. I'm not sure I can do it, he tells his doctor. Then, to the reader, Andy goes on. I wouldn't say I'm cursed with a massive ego, but it's never nice to admit when you don't think you're capable of something. The fact that I can shows just how scared I am and in need of counsel. Characters often fool themselves with how strong they can be. In Andy's case, though, he's under no false assumptions. He knows how much he relies on his technology. In fact, after his doctor gives him a pamphlet about how to go through a digital detox, Andy thinks, I know I could stand to spend less time looking at Twitter and playing Fortnite, but this horrible little leaflet is basically suggesting that I give up my entire life. From the opening pages of the book, right through the doctor's diagnosis and the realization of what he has to do to fix his health, Andy is honest. Sometimes his honesty is just funny. At other times, his honesty deserves a laugh and then a second look. Later in the novel, when Andy is suffering through the detox, he meets with his friend Fergus, who suggests a distraction from social media. As the local newspaper's star reporter, Fergus knows his publication inside and out, and he tells Andy that personal ads are still around. Why not go on a blind date, Fergus says. Andy hedges, and Fergus calls him out on it. Why don't you want to give it a go? He asks. Andy narrates. I squirm in the seat a little. Well, I have no idea what she looks like for starters. On Tinder, you get a picture. Oh, so you're just about the looks, are you? He gives me a look of admonishment. A bit shallow, don't you think? I look up to the ceiling in disgust. Of course I'm shallow, Fergus. I'm on Tinder. Most characters would resent their best friend calling out their undesirable traits, but not Andy. He's self-aware enough to understand his faults and comfortable enough to own up to them. It's refreshing in a character and surprising to the readers. Stories thrive on conflict, and that conflict often comes because characters can't bear to tell one another the truth. Sometimes they hide the truth from themselves. Here, however, we have a character who doesn't hesitate to tell it and doesn't bat an eye when other characters do too. That doesn't mean that life is easy for Andy Bellows, though. Not at all. Because if telling the truth spares a person from having to remember a lie, it also creates all sorts of other complications that lead to the conflict that drives the story. Before we get into that, though, it's time for our first writing exercise, what I like to call a reflection action point. You're welcome to take notes now and do these with your stories later. Just take some time to think it through. We'll start with the reflection. Think of a work in progress you might have. Now, consider one of the scenes of conflict in your manuscript. Maybe it's the climax or it's your inciting incident. Whatever you choose, you'll want to go to that scene and look at what your characters are doing and saying. What are they thinking and feeling? How much of that are they sharing? Most importantly, what are they not sharing? Are they actively hiding something or lying about it? Now for the action. After looking at your story's conflict, you'll want to open a new document on your writing device or turn to a fresh page in your notebook. If you're writing on a computer, this will be easy. Copy and paste the scene into the new document. Then rewrite the scene, only this time make your characters say exactly what's going on in their minds. Don't let them hide behind half-truths or long silences. Let them express every hurt, every bit of confusion, every longing. This might seem counterintuitive. After all, some genres thrive on misdirection and red herrings. The purpose of this exercise, though, is character building. It brings you closer to your characters and gives you deeper insight into what they need and want in key moments of heightened emotion. That allows you to deepen your relationship with them, which gives you the opportunity to write about them more effectively. It could also offer you new scenes to use or maybe even a subplot or two. After the rewrite, go back to your original manuscript and compare the two. Are you surprised by what your characters reveal to one another? Can you use some of the new material you wrote in the current scene? Can some of it be used later? Now, think about this. With the benefit of having your characters putting everything on display, can you go back to the original scene and deepen the conflict? Make your characters say something that will cause even more hurt or confusion? Could it lead to more tension? As architects of stories, it's our job to design manuscripts that will transport our readers to new places. Don't be afraid to ask your characters to surprise you, though. It might do wonders for developing them or the entire story even further. As I said, honesty may be a good policy, but that doesn't mean it's always an easy one, nor does it mean that it's even the preferable one. Despite the extreme temptation to cheat on his detox, Andy sticks with it. It helps, of course, that before logging off all of his social media accounts, he alerted everyone to what he was doing so they won't be pinging him constantly. It helps even more that he put all of his devices, including his cell phone and his gaming console, into a box, and that the box currently lives at Fergus's house. On the detox, Andy's allowed to use his computer for work, but he can't use it for anything else. A few weeks in, Andy comes to the following conclusion. I feel like a moron these days. Literally, it feels like my IQ levels have dropped off a cliff since the detox began. I've been so used to outsourcing my general knowledge to Google that when I have to fall back on the contents of my brain, I find that it's a sluggish, stupid thing with far less recall of facts than it should have. On the flip side, though, Andy's sleeping better. There's no more pain in his neck and a major reduction of pain in his gut, and his creativity has experienced a huge burst. So when he gets the opportunity to pitch a new logo design in person to a pie shop, he jumps on it. Never mind that the pie shop is in the western part of the country, more than 100 miles away. Andy's done so well and is so proud of his design that he wants to share the excitement in person, even though the one exception to the detox means he could do the presentation over video chat. But no, he can do this. After all, he managed a trip to the hardware store to buy new light bulbs for his bathroom, something he's been meaning to do but didn't because he was too busy online. That trip went so well, it boosts Andy's confidence. He doesn't need to scope out the town ahead of time online or use the GPS on his phone. Drive to a part of the country he's never visited before using only paper maps to guide him? Of course he can do this. After all, look at how well lit the bathroom is now. To Andy's credit, he even starts the day of the presentation topped up on optimism. But then he ends up lost on country roads, which might be generous because some of them are dirt trails, and driving his car into a duck pond that the map didn't warn him about. The irony is not lost on him when a farmer finds him next to his sinking car and uses a cell phone to text for help. Even in this state, though, when the farmer asks why he doesn't have a phone, Andy's honest about the detox. The farmer, a little baffled, is impressed and lets Andy use his phone to call the pie shop to explain the problem. This time, when the shop owner offers to reschedule for the next day over video chat, Andy agrees without hesitation. At least he knows he'll nail that. After all, his presentation and work are what matter the most. But it's still frustrating that all of this could have been solved so easily if he had been able to use his phone's GPS and Google to look up more information about the shop and check on what his favorite social media influencers are doing and see if Jerry on Facebook is still opposed to the construction of homes on that dairy farm. In other words, life with social media would be so much better. This push and pull in the plot continues for Andy throughout the entire book. While we often think of our characters dealing with the big moments in their lives, those things that we focus on in major scenes, it helps to remember how the big changes for them impact them on a micro level too. The crux of the novel is Andy's obsession with social media and devices and just how necessary both have become to his daily life. It's important then that he sees, and the readers see, the constant tension play out in a variety of ways. Because even though we might be able to predict the end, for Andy, it's just as much about the journey. After the duck pond incident, Andy wants to claw his way into that box with his devices in it. Unfortunately, now he can't quit the detox, even though every instinct is urging him to do so. Remember his friend Fergus, the newspaper reporter? Well, Fergus decided to write a feature story on Andy and the digital detox, and apparently it's starting to get quite a bit of interest. Andy wouldn't know, of course, because he can't go online to see what kind of attention the story got or how many likes, but Fergus assures him that more thumbs are going up every single day. If Andy quits now, he'll be letting Fergus down. He knows he was neglecting their friendship a little bit before the detox began, and Fergus will rib him endlessly for it. And really, at this point, it's only for another month. What's a few weeks for his friend's professional well-being? So, Andy forges ahead. And there is that blind date to look forward to, because Fergus even managed to talk Andy into going ahead with that. Despite how ridiculous he feels reading personal ads in a newspaper and using a landline phone to answer an ad, Andy is surprised when he talks to Henrietta and discovers that she's actually not a fan of social media. He starts to think that maybe he's not so crazy after all for actively getting off the internet. After all, Henrietta sounds like a lovely person on the phone, and she doesn't go online. His car might be in a repair shop drying out, but maybe a digital detox will be the best thing to happen to him after all, because it's been nearly a year since Andy's been in a relationship, and he misses it. So he's willing to give Henrietta and the whole personal ad idea a chance. When they meet at Heirloom Coffee Cafe, Andy starts to think his detox problems are all over. He tells readers, Henrietta comes over to me and takes my hand, shaking it gently. I can see now that she is a little taller than me, which is a first. In fact, Henrietta is not the kind of woman who has historically been my type. But my word, am I pleased that she agreed to meet me today. I may have to alter what my type is after this. Never in a million years could Andy have imagined going on a digital detox. And never in a billion years would Andy have agreed to a blind date without checking the person out online first. But here he is, having done both. And so far, the date is off to a great start. The two of them were sitting in the cafe having a lovely time when two police officers walk in and head to the counter. Andy, it's clear that the cops stopped in for a cup of coffee, and he can see them eyeing the muffins in the pastry case. He realizes that a muffin would be a really good idea. Clearly, though, Henrietta doesn't agree. From the minute the cops walk in, she's spooked. At first, Andy thinks he's done or said something wrong and even asks. Henrietta tries to reassure him that everything is just dandy. And yet, Andy says, my date still looks like the San Andreas fault has just let go, so something is definitely going on. He does his best to reassure Henrietta in a vague kind of way, even if he doesn't know what's wrong. He really starts to worry, though, when she drops to the floor and hides under the table. Andy's first concern is that she's some sort of criminal and is afraid the cops will find her, but no, it's not nearly that straightforward. After a quick back and forth in which Henrietta stage whispers about the police being a part of the deep state, Andy discovers the problem. I'm not, he says, having coffee with a hardened criminal, it appears, just someone who's clearly a conspiracy theorist of the highest order. Joy of Illuminati joys. It seems as if Andy's digital detox has led him to another baffling situation that ends with Henrietta trying to run away from the police by trying to climb through the bathroom window only to get stuck in it. When the cafe owner alerts Andy to the situation, he works to help get Henrietta unstuck and asks her where on earth she got all of her information. Her answer? YouTube. Eventually, everything gets sorted out, but the result leaves Andy more conflicted than ever before on doing the detox. On this day, his pro-social media stance has gotten another vote. Dating on the internet is certainly a good thing, he tells readers. I've managed to prove that today. I would like to think that Henrietta is alone in her wild and crazy way of thinking, but all the evidence I've seen in the dark recesses of the internet proves that this probably isn't the case. Don't believe me? Search for the Flat Earth Society on YouTube sometime. If you need to chew on something while you do it, I recommend a nice chocolate muffin. By this point in the book, we can't help but feel Andy's pain. His detox has led him to some strange places, literally, and allowed him to meet some strange people, also literally. The irony is glaring when he thinks about how often these things happen to people online as well. The humor is subtle and whiplash fast, as is often the case in books by British authors about British characters, but it emphasizes time and again Andy's conflict about whether social media is a good thing or a bad thing. It gives the plot a universal appeal because it doesn't need a big sweeping fight scene or a dramatic speech to make an impact. Andy's struggle could be anyone's struggle. Time for our next reflection action point. We're going to go back to the work in progress that you chose earlier. Pick a major plot point and then go to the scenes immediately following it. What's happening in them? What about your character's struggle in those scenes is universal? What is the thing that readers can point to and say, I know how that feels because I felt the same way? Now, find ways in those scenes to link to your character's main conflict. For Andy, it's the anxiety that comes from going on a date with someone new, thinking that she'll be a nice, normal person, and then discovering that her quirks are related to the very thing he's trying to change about himself. The idea of that change, in fact, is one of the themes of the novel overall. The fact that change is hard and scary. Andy's afraid of what will happen in a life without social media, but he's also afraid of what might happen with it. His situation and his feelings on it are unique to him. They're incredibly specific. And yet when we read this scene, we know how he feels. We can identify with his helplessness and his willingness to just give up already. That's where part of the magic of writing happens. The more specific you can make your scenes, the more universal they'll feel, because we all experience events in ways that are unique to each of us. The pandemic is a great example. There are some things that we all witness, wearing masks and social distancing, but how those circumstances affect each of us in our homes, with our loved ones and our jobs and our individual responsibilities is unlike what anyone else is experiencing right now. Yet when we swap stories, we all know exactly how it feels to be under lockdown and watching a worldwide phenomenon. Of course, most of us probably haven't found ourselves on a blind date where the date gets stuck in the bathroom window trying to escape a dark organization made up of people trying to pick out muffins. We have felt frustrated when we've made ourselves forego a guilty pleasure for our health, though. We've winced when making a mature adult decision when all we really wanted to do is lie down on the floor and throw a tantrum like a toddler. The circumstances might be different for us compared to Andy, but even as we find ourselves laughing out loud at his situation, we also find ourselves sympathizing with him. And that's what the best stories do. Whether you're writing about wizards in school or a white lawyer defending a black man in the Deep South or a duel between magicians, the connection between you and your readers happens when they can identify a little piece of themselves and their own lives in the characters and plots you've created. Find that universal theme, and your readers will be hooked no matter what kind of story world you construct. The connection also happens when you have a winning protagonist, or at least one who's willing to spill his guts on the page. For that level of intimacy, writers often turn to first-person point of view. In Andy's case, though, we're not just following the story along from his vantage point. He's actively reaching out to us, making us participants in his dilemma. The storytelling technique used by author Nick Spalding is a little bit of a risk, and if you read some of the reviews of the book, they'll show you that not everyone bought into Andy's voice. But if you take it as it's presented, a guy genuinely befuddled with his state in life and wanting to make an equally genuine effort at getting better, this novel is a riot from start to finish. Andy's voice definitely contributes to that. He breaks the fourth wall regularly, drawing us in, almost expecting a response from us. Like when he decides to do the detox and he meets Fergus the next day in a coffee shop, Fergus goes to place their coffee orders. When he leaves Andy at the table, Andy says, look at all the people in here who are using their mobile phones. Look at them all, surfing the internet, looking at Twitter, playing Candy Crush. I have only been offline for 20 hours and I'm already insanely jealous of everybody else in the world. Andy wants us to feel his confusion, his agony, and his ambivalence, because throughout the entire novel, he waffles back and forth between being pro-detox and anti-detox. His various experiences let him see with ease how there are benefits and drawbacks to social media and mobile devices. And while he's physically and mentally feeling better, emotionally, he's still in that gray space in the middle. This becomes even more apparent when he falls into a new friendship, almost by accident, with another young woman named Grace, who sees Fergus's article about Andy's detox. Soon enough, Andy and Grace are spending lots of real quality time together. They're going for long walks and exploring the English countryside. At some point, Fergus does another article which inspires people to follow Andy's example and go on the digital detox with him. They call themselves Loggers Off. To Andy's horror, And Fergus and Grace's delight, Loggers Off has asked Andy to come and speak. Andy's not necessarily a wallflower, but one of the perks of being online has always been the separation between him and others by a screen. Once again, a sense of obligation forces Andy's hand. Fergus is getting a lot of positive attention for the article. Grace is the owner of the coffee shop where Andy had his unfortunate date with Henrietta. Henrietta is long gone, but Andy spent a lot of time at the cafe with Grace since then, and it's decided that Loggers Off will hold their first meeting there. Increased foot traffic would mean a significant bump in sales for Grace. Andy, being the decent guy he is, turns to commiserate with readers when he says, "How can I say no? I'm going to have to do this stupid meeting with a bunch of people I've never met before because I'm being forced into doing it, thanks to my so-called best friend and the woman I'm in love with." No. I didn't say that. I'm not in love with her, honestly. So, yes, Andy's head over heels. His direct address of readers, time and again, flows back to an internal monologue and then into talking to the other characters with such ease that we feel like we're sitting with all of them at the table. And Andy continues to talk to us as if we are. On the next page, after he's tried to reassure us that he really isn't in love with Grace, he rationalizes how there's probably a lot more hype around Loggers Off than substance. There's probably already a lot of information on the internet about doing a digital detox, he reasons. And then he says, "Obviously I can't check, but given that you can find reams of information about a deep sea creature called the flying buttocks, I'm pretty sure digital detoxes will be covered at some length as well. I'll now wait while you go and Google flying buttocks." Done? Let's carry on then. These little asides are delightful and funny in and of themselves. We're not used to protagonists being just as aware of us as we are of them, but this technique by Nick Spalding builds a bond between Andy and readers that contributes to the success of the book. Because in reality, the effects of being addicted to social media are very real and not funny at all. By letting Andy talk to us, though, we know that because he's finding amusement in his personal situation, it's totally fine for us to laugh along with him, because that's what we're doing. We're laughing with him, not at him. And that kind of camaraderie is what helps forge compassion for Andy and others like him. And Andy, by the way, definitely sees this as a two-way relationship between us and him. In the last couple of pages of the novel, he says, "Life is about finding your balance, no matter how long it takes, no matter how hard it is to get there, and no matter how many duck ponds you have to drive into, because you will get there. Trust me. And if you don't trust me, then you can always Google it, can't you?" By stretching the conventional way of writing first-person point of view, author Nick Spalding gives us an experience that is witty, breezy, and also thoughtful all at the same time. And now for your last reflection action point of the night. Look at the point of view you've chosen for your work in progress. Use one of the important scenes you picked out earlier. What point of view are you writing from? What made you choose it? Have you thought about using another? If you've chosen third-person point of view, copy and paste a section into a new document and then flip everything to first person. Give writers a chance to hear and feel exactly what the character is thinking. If you've already written in first-person point of view, let the character talk directly to the reader. Let them justify their bad choices and try to explain away their mistakes. Let them share the secrets they won't even share with their loved ones. See what comes out of exploring your character in these ways. Does it deepen your understanding of them? Does it give you something new to incorporate at another point in the story? Are you surprised by what you find? The best writing, no matter what genre, surprises us over and over. When we can laugh at something because the character gives us permission to, it brings us closer to the character and the story. Andy certainly doesn't have a problem wearing his heart on his sleeve. It's probably right under the holster he has for his cell phone, or it would be if he was the running sort of chap. But we don't mind that he isn't. He's endeared himself to us so much by the end of the book, and we've laughed out loud at so many things that he shared and experienced that we can see ourselves being good friends with him and Fergus and Grace, enjoying the perfect cup of flat white coffee in Grace's cafe. And that's what the best kind of story does, after all. It draws us in and warms our hearts, even as it surprises us that we're sharing a table with these characters. In the case of Logging Off by Nick Spalding, almost literally. And that's tonight's Biblio Breakdown. If you're interested in more sessions like this, feel free to visit my author website for the podcast version to hear about more great books and how you can use what they do well in your own stories. New episodes air on the 5th Friday of every month with 5 Fridays. In conclusion, one of my passions in life is to help other writers, so please don't hesitate to get in touch and follow me on social media. I truly believe that words have the fundamental power to change people and the world. And if you're looking for an editor, it would be my honor to work with you on your writing project to make it as polished as it can possibly be. Please do stay in touch, and thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ekta.
Thanks.
That was great. We have time for some questions. So if you have a question for Ekta, you can type it into the chat, or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you. Someone had to leave a little early, but they said this has been very interesting. Thanks for the exercises.
Sure, absolutely. Any questions at all? I'm very happy to talk about this or anything else. Anything writing related, that is.
I have a question. I don't know if you you might have said, was this the author's first novel?
It was not, actually. This was his, gosh, I want to say 3rd or 4th.
Okay.
And I have read others by Nick Spalding, but this is the one I definitely liked the best. There was just something really appealing about Andy, the main character's voice. And it was a lot of fun to just sort of engage with him, because I never read a book where the protagonist is breaking the fourth wall so regularly. It's really, like I said, sort of like a conversation, an ongoing conversation
Right.
between him and readers. And it was just so much fun to see that.
Thank you. We did have a question come in. They're asking, your analysis focused mainly on plot. What other aspects do you like to analyze?
Wow, that's a really good one. So the most recent Biblio Breakdown that I did, which aired in January, actually talks about info dumps. You know, we hear information dumps. We hear how it's a bad idea to throw all sorts of information at your readers all the time. And for most writers, yes, that's true. But there was a book that I read called Savage Road by Chris Haughty, and you can go to my author website and find the podcast that I did for that. He was using info dumps left, right, and center, and it worked so beautifully in the novel, because Chris Haughty is an experienced novelist and I believe has worked in Hollywood as well as a screenwriter. So he really knew what he was doing and was doing it intentionally. So that was the most recent one, and it was kind of fun to see that being turned on its head, and to see that you can use information dumps when you do it with intention in a really good way. Another one that I did was last year. I read The Ancestor by Danielle Trussoni. It's a Gothic novel, and that book just showed how beautifully mood was used throughout the entire novel. And the challenge, of course, there is that when you hear Gothic novel, you're automatically thinking of a specific mood. You're thinking of, you know, a dark castle, which there is actually one in the book. Lots of scenes at night, that sort of thing. But it was really interesting to sort of analyze mood as it's used in her book, and how we can use things like word choice and setting to very intentionally build a mood no matter what genre you're writing. So as I explained in the beginning, Biblio Breakdown really is about me reading fantastic books and seeing one of the overarching themes in terms of writing, with the writing craft, and sort of highlighting that. So I'm really excited that I get to share good books and writing mechanics with everybody this day.
Thank you. Another comment said, thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome.
Before we conclude for tonight, let's see. I'm going to share my screen briefly, just to remind everyone that the next workshop will be on March 17th at 7 p.m. The topic will be Embracing the Child's Eye, Writing for Children and Teens with author Sarah Aronson. So be sure to register for that one. And then I will go back to the chat and see if we have any new questions. So nothing new has come through. Ekta, did you want to share anything else before we conclude for the evening?
Not anything off the top of my head. I'm just, really grateful to be able to do these webinars for all of you. And you're always welcome to reach out to me later. I know sometimes questions come up afterwards. So feel free to reach out to me with my contact information, or Solomon knows how to get a hold of me. So please do just reach out.
Absolutely. All right, well, I want to thank everyone for coming. Thank you again to Ekta. That was wonderful.
Pleasure.
And we will see you at the next webinar. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.